Okay, so let's talk a little bit about homeschooling 101. I have been asked quite a bit about homeschooling in general, some of the specifics, and I honestly considered writing a PDF, like doing some sort of ebook that I could share that way. But at the same time, I know mom life is busy. We don't often have time to sit down for a breather, much less pick up any type of book, whether it's an ebook or an actual like paperback book. So I figured, well, why not do this? Why not do something on YouTube or, whichever way this is streaming for you, and have it so that you can listen to it, whether you're doing the laundry right now or doing the dishes, or maybe you're going on a walk. If so, I'm happy to join you. So let's talk about homeschooling. So the first question that I get is, well, how do I know if it's right for me? How do I know? Honestly, I can't answer that for you. This is your decision. It is your family's decision. It's something that you're going to have to pray over. You're going to have to think about the pros and cons. If you are working full time, yes, logistically, that could make it a little more complicated. Not impossible, but just a little more complicated. It's definitely something that you need to remember that ultimately this is your decision. No one else can make this decision for you. But I do want you to remember to stay away from analysis paralysis. You can sit and analyze whether or not you should homeschool for the next 10 years. And your child would probably be what? 4th grade? Graduated? So, it's kind of one of those things where you can sit on that bench of indecision forever. But if you are feeling that call to homeschool, why not try it for a year? Why not just give it a shot? Or if it's something where you've heard about it and you're like, ugh, I don't really want to do it, well, then there's your answer, right? So it's kind of one of those things where just make a decision. And I'm going to be honest, as someone who worked in the classroom, I taught middle school for 7 years. I taught 5th grade for 1 year, and I worked at the university level for 8 years. As a teacher, every single year, you are learning. You are learning the students you're working with. You are kind of learning as you go every single year, okay? So all of that to say, if you decide to homeschool, please do not assume that you will have it all figured out whenever you start, because none of us do. Those of us who have worked in the public school environment, homeschooling is still an adjustment. So just keep that in mind. Here's another question, and I do have cheat sheet papers that if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I wrote down the questions, the most commonly asked questions that I've gotten. Okay, so how do you start homeschooling if you are not a teacher yourself? You just start. Now, the requirements, the rules, regulations for homeschooling, that will vary based on your location. Whether you are in the US, whether you are abroad, depending on the state that you're in, there are different rules and regulations. I know in my particular state, you have to have a high school degree or equivalent. A college degree is not required. You do have to submit certain documentation to the Department of Education every year, and that, official paperwork should be expected no matter where you're at. But what that paperwork is and what it looks like will vary from location to location. So that's really the first thing to kind of keep in mind. How do you start? Look up what you're required to be doing, okay? Automatically know that you're going to have to cover the different content areas, yes. Language arts, reading, science, social studies, math, health, different curricular things if you want to cover, different things. But all of that will also be mentioned in the rules and regulations, and you can find all of that on your state's Department of Education website too. So keep that in mind, especially if you're stateside. Second thing, how do you start if you are not a teacher yourself? Find your community. Find other homeschooling families, one, that you can ask questions to. Because homeschooling is not a super easy journey. It's just not. I know why my children get frustrated with certain things. It's because I do too. So imagine teaching someone that acts just like you do sometimes. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's a little frustrating. But But find your community. You can have field trips together. You can have play dates. Maybe, you have a friend who excels in a certain topic and you excel in another topic. Well, why not do little like co-op days where you teach each other's kids? Super easy. For example, I speak Spanish. I study Spanish. It was what I majored in school. And so I have taught Spanish to my friends' kids before. Taught it to my children. Very basic, working toward that intermediate kind of level in terms of what I've, taught them. But still, just use your resources, delegate, those things like that. So find your community. Find your community. Whether it is on Facebook, you can find different co-ops on Facebook. Sometimes just ask around, honestly. Ask around. Word of mouth is pretty powerful, right? Okay, the third thing, curriculum. Now, I have been asked a lot of times, well, what curriculum should I use? I can't answer that for you either, because there are a lot of curriculums out there. Some are more hands-on than others. Some are, online. Some are connected to a certain faith. Some are not. It truly just depends. Now, one thing that I can tell you, and this is something that we actually do, I use a math curriculum from one particular company. I use a language arts and reading and science and history from another company. But I also have found the Spanish curriculum that I love from a different company. So it's okay to mix and match. It's fine. It really helps you to tailor the curriculum and the homeschooling experience to the needs of your children, and also what it is, you're wanting to focus on. Maybe you don't want to teach them Spanish. Okay, cool. Well, there's French, there's Latin, there's Hebrew, there's all sorts of things that you can implement in the homeschooling curriculum. My kids love to cook, so we focus on like cooking units. They absolutely love that. Now, next question. Structure. Oh, is there a schedule? Should there be a schedule? What should that look like? And I will be honest, that is going to vary by family. Now, there are some families, I have some friends who have more strict schedules. Like they have, at this time we're going to do this, at this time we're going to do this, and it's a more strict schedule, right? Starts at a certain time, ends at a certain time. That's awesome. It works for them. That's amazing. Now, other schedules, like my family, I'll just be honest and tell you, our schedule is a little flexible in that my goal every day, and my kids know this, we need to get this stuff done before lunch, and we'll do this stuff after lunch. So we might focus on English, language arts, reading, and science before lunch. And then we'll do math and history after lunch. And whatever extracurricular stuff they're doing will be after lunch as well. So those are some different things, different ways we do it. Now, if you are familiar with some of the scheduling in like different elementary programs, like especially around 4th and 5th grade, they alternate. Like some days they'll do science and some days they'll do history. So you could do that as well, as long as it's getting covered in some way. Now, also keep in mind that the hour recommendation that your family should be homeschooling every single day is going to vary by state. So, for example, our state, you have to homeschool for 180 days, and then you have to do it for 4.5 hours a day. That's essentially the amount of time per se. Now, what if you want to do 4 days a week? You could do 4 days a week if you want. You just have to adjust your school year to meet that. Maybe you have a garden and you want to take a few days off in order to work that garden either during harvest time or when you're planting, because a garden is a lot of work, right? Adjust your schedule to meet those needs. Your children are still learning a lot of different things doing that. So keep that in mind. Like there is actually a lot of flexibility when it comes to homeschooling in general. I mean, yes, there is an importance with the schedule, but what that schedule looks like will vary from family to family. So my suggestion is always do what works for your family. I'll be honest, I work from home as well. I'm currently not working on an education consultant project, so my schedule is wide open. Now, if I am working on a project, then I'm going to make sure that our schedule is a little tightened up. We're going to start at this time, we might end at this time, or if I have a meeting or something like that, maybe we're going to do school for this many hours in the morning and this many hours in the afternoon, and I might have a meeting in the middle of the day. So it really depends on what that looks like for your family in terms of flexibility, but it's really nice. I mean, as long as you are meeting those requirements, then homeschooling can be a beautiful thing. Now, here's also the importance of scheduling. Sanity. Sanity. Your sanity, my sanity. The fact of the matter is, having just some outline of a schedule, whatever you need that to look like. If you need a specific one for your sanity, well, then do that. If you need more flexibility in your schedule for your sanity, then do that. But for me, I need to know what we're going to be doing each day. Okay, we're going to do science this day, we're going to do social studies this day, or Spanish this day. We have gymnastics, we have soccer these days. But at the same time, I know that this is when we're going to be getting things done. And that helps me to kind of keep that ball rolling, right? Now, also, when it comes to scheduling, one of the things that my kids would do, we would start with just writing in the morning. And my daughter, she just started kindergarten, so it would be just basic writing. But they would start with these writing books just to work on handwriting. And that is something that we would do right after breakfast before we actually dove into the content itself. And we would do it for a timed amount of time, like 10 minutes maybe, just depends. Maybe 7, maybe 10, maybe 12. Usually no more than 10 though, because they would do writing in their other content areas. So we would do that, but them knowing that they had to get like a certain amount of, for example, their writing done, that gave them a little bit of learner autonomy. It helped them to kind of develop more independence in their learning process. So they would pick up their book, they would do what they were supposed to do because they knew that, okay, well, this is the time I need to do this. Let me go ahead and do it. But again, that was always still appropriate for their age level, their development level, and where they were at in terms of the curriculum. So my kindergartner, what she was doing looked different from what my 3rd grader was doing, because it has to be developmentally appropriate. I can't expect the same things from a 6-year-old that I would expect from a 9-year-old, right? Okay, so let's talk about another question I've been asked. Can you start homeschooling at the beginning of kindergarten, or should you wait? Like, what should you do? Well, many families begin homeschooling from the first day of kindergarten. Many don't. It's up to you. If you want to start homeschooling at the beginning of kindergarten, do it. It's an amazing experience at that young age. I loved being the person that taught my kids to read. I got to see my kids read their first words. That was powerful to me because I know that's not often the case. Now, I got to help my son with multiplication and long division, and it was kind of frustrating at first because it's a hard concept, right? But I got to be there when that light bulb clicked and he was like, look what I just did. So, it really is up to you. It really is up to you whether or not you want to start in kindergarten or whether or not you want to start when they're older. Now, some people will homeschool just during elementary, and then they'll send their kids to public or private school for middle or high school. That's fine too. Whatever it looks like for your family, that's fine. Now, a lot of people also ask about the social aspect. Honestly, my kids are very involved. They play soccer, they do gymnastics, my daughter's doing dance, they have friends that they hang out with, they have cousins that they hang out with, they have kids at church that they play with. So the social aspect, it's covered. And that's really, important to remember as well. With kids, going out, playing with friends, that's great. Have some play dates, if they're playing sports, if they're going to the park and you're having play dates with moms, or if you have other homeschooling families that you're doing school with as well, maybe one day a week, maybe one day every 2 weeks, then that's still an incredible experience. Now, another question that's a little more difficult to answer is homeschooling easy for a parent with no experience teaching? Well, maybe not. The fact of the matter is, homeschooling, I can't say that it's easy. Some days are great. Some days you finish everything you wanted to do and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, we nailed this. Like, I am a homeschooling hero today. And then the next day, you find yourself hiding out on the back porch eating the last piece of chocolate that you found in the back of the pantry. I mean, some days are just frustrating, but that's also life. Like, it's kind of one of those things where I can't really answer that. Is it easy? Yes and no. For us, we love the flexibility. We love being able to go and do, hey, you want to go to the aquarium today? Okay, cool, let's do that. You want to go to the park and go fishing, or go play on the playground, or go to the zoo, or go wherever? You can do that. And that made it easy for me because I'm like, this is a lot of fun. And my kids have started to see it as fun as well. Now, yeah, that's just something I can't really answer. Is it easy if you've never done it? You know what? Nothing's easy if you've never done it before. I guess that's the best answer. Is it easy? Well, driving was not easy until I learned how to do it. Riding a bike was not easy until I learned how to do it. Taking care of goats and chickens was not easy until I learned how to do it. So just the same thing with homeschooling. Homeschooling is not necessarily easy until you just dive in and you figure out what works for you. And what works for one of your children may not work for the other child. So it's finding that family dynamic as well. But overall, I can tell you, it's an incredible experience. It's so wonderful to be able to still get that cuddle time in the morning with my kids. I am that first hug every morning, and I love that. I love being able to hang out with my kids any time of day, but at the same time, we do more than just the curriculum content area things. We cover so many fun things. We cover things that really cater to their interest. Their learning experience is individualized. I focus on the needs of my children. And because of that, we do have that flexibility in our schedule, in our hours. Some families prefer to start school later in the afternoon, or maybe go into PM, like evening, like early evening, because of a parent's work schedule. Also when it comes to homeschooling, the curriculum, like I said, you can add to the curriculum as well. So maybe you are learning about, or not you, well, you know what? Sometimes I feel like I'm learning this stuff. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't remember this. But maybe you want to teach about ecology. Well, you know what? My kids and I, we walked down through the woods to the creek behind our house, and we looked at the different ecosystems that may exist just on our land alone. So, it's really a fun, eye-opening experience. But when it comes down to it, my friends, homeschooling is one of those things where ultimately you just, oh, I have a guest. Homeschooling is one of those things where ultimately you just pray over it. Hi puppy. You just pray over it and you decide if it's right for your family. If you have any specific questions, then please don't hesitate to reach out. I am happy to answer them. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Homeschooling has been an incredible experience for my family, obviously.